And that's how God is defined, the eternal, uncreated, necessary first cause. I think that makes sense.
I don't. Welcome to Rational Disbelief. I'm Joe.
And I'm Kat. And today we're going to be looking at someone who is attempting to answer the question, who made God?
Ooh, that is a great question. I can't wait to see how this gets answered.
If God created the universe, then who created God? A lot of people have asked that. It's a great question. My answer is that God is the one thing that doesn't need a cause. Now that may sound like special pleading, but stay with me.
Awesome. I'm glad to see that he acknowledged that it looks like special pleading. But you may be wondering, what exactly is special pleading? Special pleading is a logical fallacy that asks for an exception to a rule be applied to a specific case without proper justification of why that case deserves an exemption. Let's see what justification is given here.
If I've got a tower of bricks, you can ask, what's the top brick standing on? Well, it's being held up by the next brick. All right, what's that on? The brick below it. Okay, but what's holding up all of the bricks? Well, the table they're on. So what's the table standing on? Well, it's on the ground. Great, so what's the ground standing on? Well, the ground is the ground. It doesn't stand on anything. And God is like the ground.
Wait, so the ground is the ground, and God is like the ground, so God is just God?
That seems to be what he's implying. But that's called a false analogy, which is when someone assumes that because two things are alike in some ways, they must be alike in another, like comparing God to the ground. This argument really doesn't make sense as the two things can't be compared.
Yeah, this fails to take into account volcanoes, sinkholes, tectonic plate fault lines, other instances of the ground not being the ground. Oh, yeah, and don't get me started on everything that's underneath the ground or Earth's crust.
Contingent things like these bricks, us, and our universe all need a cause, something to stand on.
Let's assume this argument is correct, that contingent things all need a cause. This argument still doesn't prove God. It proves a cause, but not that the cause is God, let alone the Christian God.
Correct. It could be any number of causes that people believe throughout the years, such as Yahweh or God, Allah, Ra and or Atum, Ometeotl, Namu, An, Ki and Enlil, Kumolipo and Boele, Apsu and Tiamat, and many, many more.
But God is the necessary ground of all being. God is the one thing everything else sits on and therefore doesn't need a cause. And that's how God is defined, the eternal, uncreated, necessary first cause. I think that makes sense.
I don't. I think we might have another fallacy here. This one being personal incredulity. This fallacy is when someone dismisses something because they either don't understand it or choose to ignore it.
You may also hear a version of this fallacy called God of the gaps. Basically, anytime there's a gap in our current scientific knowledge, God is used to fill in the blanks to explain the phenomena.
These are extremely similar, but not always the same. In this case, it happens to overlap both of these.
This whole argument is somewhat similar to the Kalam cosmological argument, which states that whatever began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. Here's the thing about the Kalam cosmological argument. It does not mention God at all. If we assume the premise is true, it proves a cause, but it does not prove a God. Just like I mentioned before when he said that all contingent things need a cause. Even if they do, that cause may not be a God.
Also notice that he uses the word contingent in the video. If we look at the definition of this, it means occurring or existing only if certain circumstances are the case, or subject to chance.
He appears to use this to distinguish everything else from God. For God, however, he gives the definition of eternal, uncreated, necessary first cause, without giving any explanation of where the definition comes from.
So it was special pleading after all.
Thanks so much for watching. As we are a newer channel, we'd love it if you could like this video and subscribe to our channel to help us grow. Also, you can find us on Instagram and on TikTok at Rational Disbelief.
You can also let us know what you thought of this video in the comment section below. While you're there, feel free to leave suggestions for future topics we can explore in our journey of rational disbelief.